Hi everyone, I'm Jacqueline Garcia and I am Synergex's Education Services Program Manager. I'm here today just to introduce the topic and our speaker and go over a couple of housekeeping things for our webinar. I also wanted to quickly introduce Doug Hirth, who's off screen right now. He'll be helping out with questions later on in the webinar. And we ask that we're going to save questions until the end, but if you have any during the presentation, you can go ahead and submit them through the chat functionality and go to webinar, and he'll be keeping track of them and read them out to us at the end so that our presenter can answer, or hopefully answer, any of your questions. We're obviously here today to talk about version 11 and REV11 licensing. We're really excited to help you understand more about what this new upgrade is all about, and tell you a little bit about our speaker. He is sitting here next to me matching for all of you. The most important thing I have to say about him is that he's a Hufflepuff. Hopefully some of you in the audience know what that means. But he is a computer science graduate. He's been with us for just shy of 6 years. I believe January will mark 6.
Yep.
And he's been a stellar member of our developer support team the entire time he's been at Synergex. So without further ado, here's Philip Bratt.
All right. Thanks, Jacqueline. All right. Perfect. So we're here to talk about version 11. So let's get this PowerPoint underway. All right. So clicking, apparently. There we go. All right. So so we can rebuild him, right? So we're talking version 11. We're talking about, not that Synergy is broken, but we're talking about improvements, just like the $34.7 million man adjusted for inflation, of course, from the early 70s. So we made improvements. And so the goals setting off when we were talking about version 11 is we're like, hey, let's get a major version out. And luckily someone else was in the room going, well, we should probably put stuff in that version. So let's talk about what they put into the version, right? So we wanted to put in our new licensing scheme, smarter licensing, simpler licensing, just a better way to get your licenses. And so that got put in there. Then there was all that talk in Europe about, security. We need to make sure everyone's data is secure and all that. And so, hey, let's do some security enhancements as well. And in terms of security, I mean, we're trying to secure data, and so we want our data to work, right? And there's that bothersome saying with the Windows and Unix-based platforms where you have the two separate files and sometimes they get out of sync. And, honestly, in terms of security, maybe that's the best thing. I mean, if this data doesn't work and no one can read it, then it's ultimately secure, right? No, right. So what we have to do is we have to fix that so you can use your data and you can secure your data. And so that got put in here as well. We're also going to talk about faster. We're talking development tools, and so they have to be quick because, developers are super patient, right? And so, we all have a bunch of serenity when it comes to, perfect serenity when it comes to patience. I know you're probably telling me I need to move along at this point. So we wanted to make it faster because these are development tools and speed is better. That's, perfect value added to the product. And so faster speeds on things. And then, of course, we have our new features. Everyone loves shiny new features. And so as I talk about the new features, I'm going to try and address them as like what's useful now and then what can be useful for specific ones. I'll try to point out the two kinds of features there just so everyone's clear, is this something I could use in a specific scenario, or is this something that is generally better just by using that higher runtime or the new language features and that kind of stuff. So let's go ahead and start talking about REV11 licensing. But first, let's do some housekeeping, new requirements for version 11, because, when new stuff comes out, we always have to do that. And so Windows 7 is losing support from Microsoft starting in January of next year. And so we are not testing version 11 with Windows 7 as per our usual. Once Microsoft stops supporting it, then we stop testing with it. And so the version 11 is Windows 8 or higher, or the equivalent Server 2012. SDI, this is our Synergy integration for Visual Studio. So you are now required to have the core components of 10.3.3D or higher on your machine for those. And of course, if you're doing everything in version 11, then you can have the version 11 components and all that with it. So this is the version that's going to be supported for Visual Studio 2019. We still have support for 2017, and they're not doing updates. Once again, Microsoft is not doing stuff for their 2015, so we're not doing 2015 on this. When you put on the, like say you're doing a new install for this, then you do need to have the .NET Framework 4.7.2 installed on the machine. Usually on most Windows machines, this is already installed. A lot of people haven't had issues with it, but I work in support and there's always exceptions to the rules. And so you want to make sure, especially like the easiest way for me on this is when you're installing Visual Studio, you have the individual components tab and you can just click, I want 4.7.2 if it's not already built in to the system, and then you already have it there for your SDI. In terms of the Unix-based platforms, it's AIX 7 or higher, Solaris 11 or higher. In terms of your Linux systems, as far as I'm concerned, these are pretty much all the same thing. I'm sure your distribution is the best distribution that you're using. And I'm not even going to try to say these because I've heard them said so many different ways. But if you look there, I know the Red Hat Enterprise for Linux, that one's the easiest to say, and that's 6 or higher. So it's just we're looking for certain components in these distributions that are required for version 11. And OpenVMS 8.3, it's been 8.3 since version 9, so rock solid. Well done, guys. I'll try to throw VMS some bones once in a while here because some of these features we're going to be talking about are Unix, Linux, Windows exclusive, and so trying not to leave you guys out of the loop all the time. All right, so speaking of leaving all the VMS guys out of the loop, as you know, on VMS, you have your own licensing system that's built into VMS, but for the Windows and Unix-based and Linux platforms, they do not. And so we'll talk about the licensing simplified, our REV11 licensing. So the goal here with REV11 licensing was that there's a lot of manual processes that came to when you're trying to obtain your keys. That was the main focus. This is a better way to obtain your keys and a more automated way for both parties involved, right? And so now with the new REV11 licensing, you're synchronizing with a cloud service. Your license manager sitting on your license server is going to be syncing with that cloud service, and it's going to be pulling down updates and that kind of stuff that you order or change or whatever you want to do on those, rather than you having to put on that SKF file every single time. So, also there's fuzzy matching. This one I think is great. Instead of having your individual 10 and 9 licenses and all that kind of stuff for all your different distributions of your product that you're supporting with your customers, or internally or anything like that. Instead, you just have your one license and it works for both. So if say you have a runtime license for version 11, it still works for 10 and 9, and so it's great. Once again, we're just trying to simplify the process and not, having all that needed extra steps. For the license server itself, it's going to be going through the standard HTTPS port to go to the license service there. So it's port 443, and it's the website itself is https://thelicensing.synergex.com for any of those who, IT has to flag that and make sure you can go there for that. The IP address is there as well, but that is subject to change. That's what it's documented as right now. Use the URL if possible. If you can't use the URL and you're forced to use the IP address, then please let us know, and we can try and work with you to get that solved. And I guess now is a good time to say, if you're having issues with any of the stuff that I'm saying, in terms of it's not working that way, or I have more questions on that, then I'm going to plug myself here for our support team. Please send stuff into support, and we can help you out with that. So yes, and so let's go a little more into some REV11 licensing stuff. So the old way. So scenario. I need to upgrade some licenses. I need to renew them and all that. And so I call up Synergex, and of course they're not answering because, I'm on the East Coast and they're on the West Coast of America, and they're only starting after half the everyone else's day is done. And so I have to wait until they're open, and then I call them and I say, hey, I have 74 licenses that are expiring, and I need SKFs for every single one of them. And so 74 emails go out, and then you forward those 74 emails out to the people, and then you say, I want you to install these. And then, some of them do, some of them don't, some of them forget about it, and then you need to get, emails because they lost that email or something. Oh, I accidentally deleted that. I didn't think it was important. And so a long process. And then, of course, oh, but we're forgetting about the new guy who's starting, so we need to go get a license for him. And so it's another email back, and then another email to the whoever needs to put on the license. Oh, I need to make changes. That's another email. And so just a long manual process for all these machines. And so we're like, you know what? We can cut down on that. And so the new way with REV11 is you say, hey, Synergex, here's my license. I need to renew these. They say, all right, the renewal has gone through. And then no one else needs to do anything else, because those machines will go ahead and sync next time they're ready to sync, and the expiration dates get bumped, or the new licenses get installed. And it's lots simpler. And for the most part, the people who are using the licensing don't even have to think about it. That's probably been the best thing for me. And all the testing machines that we have to use for testing in Synergex and for cases that come in is I applied it, and now I don't have to think about it because it's done, and it's great, and I love it. And so it's really just a much better way to do it rather than doing all those SKFs. But let's talk about very specific stuff on here, right? And so we're talking about the different setups. So you still have your standalone licenses, and then of course you still have your central license manager, your license server sitting there, and it communicates with the clients. Now the important part to note here is only the ones that are the license servers need to make that communication with the web service, right? Because that's a big question that we've been getting a lot after introducing REV11 and all this. Is people are like, well, what about all those clients? Some of those aren't connected to the internet. Some of those aren't always there, always on. And it's like if you have that situation, you just have to have the license server is the only one that needs to be doing that communication through that port. And so you can still have the same setup you have now, because really all we're trying to do here is just make sure you get your keys, and then it's a simple process, and it's saving the email trees or whatever, from all the emails going back and forth. There are some frequently asked questions, and we have a page in the HTML docs for that. But for the most part, with the some of the questions we get quite often are, how often is this going to be polling, asking for licenses, doing the synchronize with the web service. Automatically, usually the answer is 7 days. Now there are some exceptions. So once every 7 days, unless you're within your 14-day trial and it's trying to make sure that you've got updates ready, or if it's getting close to expiration, because we want to make sure that that new expiration date gets pulled down. And so there are those. For the actual communications themselves, nothing actually gets downloaded. It just does a check once every 7 days unless there's changes. That's the only time that downloads will happen, and you should know when that's going to be happening, because there's usually been a communication, or you've gone to the resource center, which is great because now we have the resource center, and it's got, if you're I forget what we designate, but if you're in charge of the licenses for the company, then you can go and see the licenses on your company, and you can look at those, and you can do some changes and that kind of stuff in there. For some of the more parts, you still have to talk to us at Synergex. I know. Oh well. But we didn't eliminate all human interaction here, but which is good, because there's still some stuff that we want to make sure that there's people making common sense choices on that and that kind of stuff. And then the big one that we get asked is, what happens if I'm not connected to the internet? My license server gets disconnected. Is everyone going to suddenly lose all their licenses? And the answer is no. Like I said, when there are changes, there is a download, so the keys still reside on the license server. And so for your license server and your license clients, they can still grab those keys even when you're not connected to the internet. You do have to, connect eventually. And what you have is, if you've been disconnected from the internet, you have 104 days. Now, approximately. It's kind of crazy that you would ever hit this. The scenario we're mostly thinking about when this happens is this is probably a machine that's like gone away, been destroyed or whatever, like a VM that you're no longer using it, you've just forgot about. And so what it is, specifics here. So after, excuse me, after 30 days, you get a little automated email that says, hey, this one license hasn't synced in 30 days. And then we contact you and we're like, hey, what happened to this license? Is it okay? And, with the sincerity in our voice, of course. And you can make a decision there. If you continue to not respond to that, then you'll get an error 1 in 60 days, and then we'll send another email going, is your license okay? I mean, is everything all right? So, and then at 90 days, you'll get an error. There will be an error message, and you'll have you'll have a 15-day window before a forced expiration before you have to sync again. This is mostly, like I said, for trying to make sure that licenses are active and still being needed and used and that kind of stuff. If you do anticipate that a machine is going to be disconnected for more than 30 days, then go ahead and contact your sales rep, and they can make adjustments and that kind of stuff for you. That's all, like I said, there's still manual processes in there that we can go in and change stuff, and not everything's automated and, not cold computer, knocking stuff out there. So that's still there. And of course, if you have any more questions or anything like that, you ask them here, or we can send them to support if we don't get to them. So that's REV11 licensing in a nutshell there. Now let's start talking about some other stuff as soon as the slide changes. There we go. All right. So another note here is for all of you low-level Windows or UI Toolkit users. We saw some issues with the high DPI screens because monitors, they always get better and things always change and all that kind of stuff. And so we did add support for high DPI monitors and for resizing and that kind of stuff. And with that, we also changed it so the default Windows XP style that was being used is now up to the Windows 7 one, so there have been adjustments there. All right, so let's start talking about stronger. So enhanced security. All right, so we did have we now support OpenSSL 1.1.1 with version 11. What does this actually mean, though? So this applies for your XF Server Plus, your SQL Connect, and your HTTP API if you're using encryption and all that kind of stuff, right? So right now, your SCL, which is the security something level. Suddenly my mind goes blank. But anyways, it's the how much security you want on this. Right now, it's defaulting to TLS 1.2 and using 1.3 where possible. So that's the security level of 3. If you're set to 0 on your calls and that kind of stuff, that's going to default to 3. We still have a 2 option for those who want to use the lesser. I think that's TLS 1.1, but we did get rid of option 1 on there. So I anticipate that most of you are probably on a 0 or a 3 in that case, and so when you do the upgrade, that is a change that has happened, and it's TLS 1.3. Just looking at that, there's been some performance changes and that kind of stuff. So lots of good stuff, and of course enhanced security and encryption and that kind of stuff. We also had the option for XF Server and XF Server Plus to run as a non-root or non-admin. As this was a requested feature by some for compliance and that kind of stuff, that they couldn't have stuff running on the system as root or admin, and so that feature has also been added for security purposes. And so that is security. All right, so improved resilience. So this is the resilient option for ISM files. This is our move to try and do the 24/7 computing, right? And so in the past, We know that some people have like a weekend function where they have to run through and do re-index all their files and all that just to make sure that everything is right. But now it's going to be re-indexing as it goes with the resilient. Now, one thing everyone gets without the resilient or no is we are now conscientiously going data first when it comes to our writes, right? Because the losing stuff in the index and getting the index off is less important than making sure the data gets written out to those files. Now, if you do have resilient on there, what it's going to do is if it's remote files and you're running Active Server, then it does every time you do an open or update. When it's out of sync, it's going to go ahead and do a reindex, which means we can do reindexing while the file is in use and while the runtime has it. So that's a really big feature and really great that we can do that. And so that happens automatically with an open and update. And then if for some reason they become out of sync while the file is open, then you're going to get an error that says that they're out of sync, and that is a trappable error. So it doesn't blow up on you. You can still trap it and know that something needs to be done, like the file needs to be closed, reopened, so you can resync it and that kind of stuff. If there are major issues, then you can use your you still have your ISUtil. So you do the new -s, which will tell you if it's out of sync, and if so, you can attempt to do a repair. But this is for damaged files and that kind of stuff. So, but really, if you're using the resilient files, then you shouldn't have to worry about re-indexing at that point because you have that. Now, I've got my little graphic here on the side, which is super pretty and all that. Basically, this is the way it's working right now. In the future, we are looking at doing a full resiliency to help with the 24/7 computing, which will eliminate the need for the cache, and everything's just going straight to the database that way. And so just for the future, we are looking at doing more of that and going even further in this direction. And so it's really great. And I'm really excited to be getting less of, I don't know why this file is out of sync type of thing, and us looking through the processes and that kind of stuff. So great feature right there. All right, so faster things. All right, so runtime improvements. There were some for the Windows users and that kind of stuff. There was the Spectre meltdown issues that occurred back in 10. It wasn't 10 specifically, it was the versions of Windows that was happening on. We have made runtime improvements to mitigate those, and up to 20% faster on those. And so if you were seeing a difference with those issues arising and the changes that Windows was making, then we're trying to mitigate those changes on our end. And so you do see faster runtime improvements. The .NET garbage collection is much faster, which is nice. We made some changes there in order to help out, especially with the web services and that kind of stuff. If you're using .NET for web services and Synergy.NET DLLs and that kind of stuff, it's been very helpful. Also with error handling. Error handling can be expensive, especially when we're talking web applications and that kind of stuff. And so know that there's been improvements with the .NET error handling with on errors and the IO error list. Also with the dev experience, if you're using Visual Studio for your development environment, solution loads are so much faster. For those of us who have to work with large solutions, it is just amazing, night and day between the two versions when you're looking at the SDI, and I love it. And then of course final references used to be kind of sluggish, and we tweaked that up as well. And so now you just have to decide what you're going to do with all that extra time you have, right? Maybe you'll add Gopher support to your servers, so or look at more webcomics, since I apparently have time to do that. All right. So we also have the new installs. All the installs, if you are using the SDI, then you're already familiar with the new installations using Wix for Windows. And so now all the installations are Wix. I like them. I consider them a lot. It's a much slicker experience. Plus they're pretty. And then, but this does come with changes to the silent installs for those of you who use silent installs to do your upgrades and that kind of stuff. So those are documented, and if you have any questions or issues with the documentation when you're looking at the silent installs, there's a specific section for them. Then just let us know and we can help you out with those. But yeah, so that's the Wix installers. All right, so we got new features. Let's start going into our new features. So we have additional string class methods. This works for all platforms. We have the concat, so you can take up the 4 strings and add them together, concatenate them. Then you can also, or you can feed a string, an array of strings into them. Now, the important part about this one is this is runtime 11 specifically, and the Q runtime compat on a lower one will disable. So you can't use these. You have to be doing version 11 and targeting version 11 for the concatenations. For the insert, this one you give it a start index in a string, and it gives you a new string with the new string inserted at the index you gave it. You can check for null or empty. You can also do a remove at a starting index, so say everything past this point I want removed, and then of course trimming the trailing and leading white space on strings has been added as well. And so lots of fun stuff you can do with the string class. But on a note of strings, remember that the string class, if you're making a string that's constantly being changed, then every single time it does one of these, it has to create a new string object. And so that means you have to get rid of the old one, make a new one, and you're constantly creating new strings. Whereas the string builder class is created for performance reasons. If you have a string that's constantly being changed, you can now just make changes to it without it doing the overhead of all those destroying the objects and creating new ones. So it's great. And so that's all documented. Make sure to check out the string builder class. It's a great thing to have on there. All right, so traditional Synergy now has a console.write-line. So yes, 2-line hello world programs. Woo, we did it. We did it. Everyone, we made it. All right. So this one is just a quick way to write something out to the console. And then, of course, you've got your system diagnostics debug class. This is very related in that what this allows you to do is if your program is built in debug, then you can use this to just write stuff out as well using the debug class. And so this is also very much great for, that sentence didn't make sense, but this is great for if you're doing anything on the web services, that kind of stuff, because you don't always get the those little diagnostics tools there. Some stuff becomes a little trickier, and so this is great. Web, no web. This gives you like where I'm at. You can just start sending stuff out with the debug class, and so it's great to have that there. We also have data encoding. This is the base 64 is now built into the system for any of you using the old code exchange or anything like that, and using it the libraries to do that. This is now built in and optimized for the runtime, and so you have your base 64 encoding for getting binary into ASCII friendly. For storing and moving it around and all that kind of stuff. This is what you want to be doing, and so we have the data encoding and decoding built into the runtime now. HTTP API, we now have patch and head. The point of these are speed. So the whole point is, so patch is if you're only making a change to like one column in your data, then you can just send a patch rather than doing a complete rewrite of all the data. So we're talking speed here, right? Head, this one is basically like, they might as well call it peak, because what you're doing is you're just looking at the header before you do a full get, and you're just getting the header to check something. And so that's there for optimizing speed as well. And then chunked encoding, which is a feature of HTTP 1.1, is now supported as well. All right. And so export configuration information for XF Server Plus, finally. All right, so for this one, using RCindy, or you can go through, if you're on Windows, the configuration program, you can export your settings into a JSON file, and then you can send that out to people and they can import it, and you can have all of those people have the same XF Server Plus settings and go to the same machine rather than doing it manually. Which is annoying, especially for QA. Oh my gosh, like when I'm setting up machines and I have to set up several machines, I'll point to the same XF server, same central machine with the same database. I'm like, oh my gosh, please let there be a way I can just say, everyone just do the same thing. And so now there's a way. Yay. Awesome. Excellent. So that one's great. I love it. I also like the select.where.like. You're going to totally like this one. Sorry, I had to do the pun. I had to. So the like is basically you're matching patterns. So with your contains or your keyed matches and that kind of stuff, you're matching for content. This one is matching for patterns. So you give it a field that you're looking at, and you give it the pattern you're trying to match with, and you have wildcards and that kind of stuff, and you can match patterns. Now you can use this for normalizing data, or you can use it for just trying to, and it also works with, what you're trying to not match. And so let's say you've got specific codes, everything's like A248, that starts with A248 and then everything else, doesn't, and you want to just start with A248, you can use the contains, but let's say you want everything that's A248, and then at the very end you want it to match with something else, and instead of doing, putting a bunch of stuff together, you can do it that way. Or so let's say you're an international company, you've got international postal codes and that kind of stuff, and they all have different layouts and that kind of stuff. You can filter by layout and those kind of things. So it's a really great thing. There's a great blog written by moi talking about it. So plugging myself in there. So moving on to the non-key sequential. If you're doing sequential reads, it's, because you're just trying to do massive reads of direct reads off of your data, then you can do the sequential read, which is great for performance. And I've talked about it before at previous dev partner conferences, but this one is if you don't really care about the keyed read because you don't care about the order, you just want all the data. Then you can do a non-key sequential. For this one is very specific to your situation. And so if you think that this might be something you benefit from, then, and you're not sure, be sure to ask us. You can talk to support, you can talk to sales and maybe get PSG out or whatever you want to do. But this one is great, especially for performance when you're just like, just give me all of it. I just need it all sequentially, just give me the data. And then SIM backup changes. I just wanted to mention this one because SIM backup is getting more and more use as we're going to everyone trying to do the 24/7 computing and that kind of stuff. And so we've changed the location on it in order to meet changing standards and that kind of stuff with how the programming stuff is working. And so that has been changed, I think. All right. So multi-scheme repository loads. This one was a highly voted one off of our ideas site. Lots of people were asking for this because I guess a lot of people use multiple schemas in their repositories, and we were, semi-aware of this, but we were amazed by the amount of people that wanted this feature. And so it's order independent. RPS util can now take multiple schema files and build them into one repository, and this is especially great with your repository projects in Visual Studio if you have those going, because you can have multiple schemas and you can just hit build and they're done. And you're like, hey, it's magic. I love it. All right, also for Synergy projects in Visual Studio, parallel builds are now supported. Parallel builds are on by default with your Visual Studio, and so if you have projects that are independent of each other, like multiple ELBs that don't really need each other to build, then that will be recognized through the dependency layout of your solution, and it'll start doing those builds in parallel, which is great. Speed, yay, speed. All right, so extension methods. So this one is for static classes, and it can even be used to extend methods that are sealed. This one, once again, I think is for more specific use. If this is a thing that you need, then you can do that. There's plenty of documentation talking about extension methods and how you use them and how you implement them. I'm actually quite, it's quite overwhelming. I was quite pleased with how much there is on this. So be sure to check out the documentation if you think this is something you can use. Like I said, it's for static classes, and you can even use it for sealed methods and that kind of stuff, for OO and all that. So then the name of function. This one allows you to use it's a specific, like a thing in your program, and use the name of. So I want the name of this thing into here, and it places it as a string in your program. And this is great to save on typing if you need to put it in at multiple places rather than typing it out every single time, because the issue we were seeing with some programmers is you type it out, but then there's no IntelliSense and there's no compiler thing to check and say, hey, that is not actually your variable name, you spelled it wrong or something. And so this helps for more consistency and using that name of function. And there is plus, if you've changed your variable name, then it'll say, hey, this variable doesn't exist. And so it's a lot more checking on there, a lot more consistency. It was also a requested feature off of our ideas site. So if you have an idea, plug for the ideas site, because we do look at those, and I love the input, making sure we're building the product that you're wanting there. So I do have a slide here. I think my next is my resources. So here's some basic, plug for the HTML docs. There is a very great section that we've added for REV11 licensing. Kudos to our team here for the licensing quick start guides. Those are great. I love them because it gives you a step-by-step, like, what are you doing, and here's the process for it. And so if you're new to the REV11 stuff, I definitely recommend checking that out and building your processes around that section. And then, of course, we've got on our main website, basically all the stuff I just listed here with your version 11 stuff, just listed all in one place. And so very good resource. Love it. Use it. All that fun stuff. So I think I am done. I'm not sure how I'm doing on time, Doug. Jacqueline, how am I doing?
You've got 5 or 10 minutes left for questions.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I took up a little more than I thought I was going to, but I guess, do we have some questions, Doug?
So we have 2 questions from Tim Mercury on the REV11 licensing.
Hey, Tim.
His first question is asking if we'll be able to keep manual license keys as an option.
So if you have a situation where manual license keys are a needed thing, then I would work that out with your sales rep. Basically, we don't anticipate any situations where you would need to do that, Tim, but just talk to your sales rep and see if that's something that, based on the situation. Because like I said, I don't want to make we don't want to make blanket statements for how everyone's setup is. And so if we didn't anticipate this being a need, but if you have something that, you feel like you'll need to do the manual SKFs for, then talk to them and see what they can do for you.
And then his follow-up question was, I believe it was on your last slide on licensing. And it is, so standalone is a repository that we could connect to on site?
So standalone, yeah, I mean, I guess getting some clarification on that. So when I say standalone, I mean like it's just the license server and it's like a laptop or that kind of thing, or maybe you have something that's on site that you want someone to be able to just connect to. I mean, that's what but then it just turns into a license server. But really what I'm talking about is if you've got like a laptop or something like that, then, and it's just self-licensing and it's just by itself, then yeah, it'll need to connect to the internet, which usually isn't a problem, but yeah, that's the whole point there. Maybe if you have a follow-up there, Tim, then hopefully I'm answering that. If not, and if I'm completely blowing it, just send me an email at support and we can look into it. But I appreciate the question. Is that it for questions we have so far? All right, well, I guess unless we have some more questions, I'm just going to expand a little bit to take up some time on some of the things we're looking at in the future. So once again, we're trying real hard to get to that 24/7 scenario, and so we're going for the full resilient, which is going to be the new keyword. There's resilient and there's full resiliency, which I mentioned. I think I mentioned it. Anyways, yes, I did. Thank you, Jacqueline. The one thing about that is, yeah, it's going to be writing data directly instead of going through the cache. It's going to be writing it directly to your database. It does come with a bit of a performance hit, and how much of that we are not sure of yet, just because it's still in works, and we're going to try and mitigate it as much as possible. But we are trying to make sure that you will be able to run important files off of there without issue. We're also looking at expanding our documentation. A lot of the questions and stuff we get from support is like, what's the best practice of doing this and doing that? And we've kind of covered a little bit of that in the Performance and Resiliency Guide. If you haven't checked that out, I will once again plug it. I plugged it at my last Dev Partner Conference, but I'm going to plug it again. Check out the Performance and Resiliency Guide, and then we are looking at maybe expanding to a best practices for stuff like how, because help you visualize like where you're going to be and that kind of stuff. We've also been looking at adding feature flags. I'm very interested in that idea. For OpenVMS guys, I didn't forget about you and gals. You have your XF. We're looking at XF server clients for OpenVMS, and also support for the x86 VMS. I heard that's going to be a thing. And all the VMS guys who are in the know were very excited about it. But that's also in the works. And as I throw these out, these are the stuff that we're considering. Some of the stuff that we're committed to doing at this point. But let us know through ideas, or talk to your sales rep and say, hey, this was mentioned. I really want that kind of stuff. If you're not already put your hat in the ring on that, because we definitely want feedback, as much feedback as possible, to know that we're making the product that you want, and stuff. So, all right. So, all right, Tim. So we have an issue where we cannot use proxy settings, nor can we enable internet access. So we must use manual keys. All right, yeah, absolutely. Do talk to us, and we'll talk to sales rep and all that kind of stuff. Exactly. So proxy server, yeah. So mostly what we're going to try and do is work with you to get the proxy settings and that kind of stuff working, because that should be working. But if it's really a hassle and no internet access, then yeah, we'll have a discussion with you. I appreciate you letting us know about that. So yes, by all means, if there's anything you need, please send it to support. This is my, Hufflepuff coming out here. Please just let us know. Help us help you. Just let us know, because we're happy to help, and all that. So yeah, looking forward to hearing from you, Tim, on that. Then how am I doing on time? We still got some time? 4? Okay. All right. So I guess also for all of you Windows users, I know I guess I'm kind of Windows heavy, guys. I don't know if you've picked up on that. If I had some other people here, we could probably talk more VMS shop, but then balance things out. One of these days, I'll get with it. But yeah, so we're also looking into support for .NET 5. I don't know if everyone's keeping up with all that stuff. I know it kind of took me by surprise. So they've made their last .NET framework that they're going to with 4.8. They're going to continue to do updates for that, but the direction is moving towards their .NET Core, and .NET Core is going to be the main upgrade to .NET 5, and so that's what they're going to be calling it, and it's going to be basically the features of framework and core into one .NET thing, and so we are looking into supporting that and expanding support on that as we can. One of the things that I'm excited about that we are looking at is better product metrics, performance and that kind of stuff, because that becomes very vital when you're going to the web and that kind of stuff and doing your cloud computing. You want things to go fast, and we get, I'd say, several cases on this. In a quarter, people asking, like performance-wise, what's the best way to do this? What am I supposed to be doing? And of course, metrics. Try to keep up with what's going on with your machine as much as possible. Look for irregularities and that kind of stuff. So that's exciting. We're also looking at data at rest encryptions for security purposes and that kind of stuff. So for people looking at that is also being looked at. The one thing I'm excited for, and this has already been demoed for some customers, is the traditional Synergy cloud support.
We got another question, so that's why
I'll
stop.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. Question, right. So Tim's also asking for cloud support. They're looking at migrating to, I believe, AWS. And so, so it depends on what you're doing and that kind of stuff. But for the most part, if you're looking to get into the cloud, then we want to get you there too. If you haven't looked at it already, or have looked at it but have more questions, I highly recommend looking at Harmony Core, because in terms of data and getting your data to be accessible quickly and in large quantities on the cloud, then Harmony Core is definitely the way to do. And I don't know if Jacqueline, if you want to plug your Harmony Core workshops or.
They're office hours, actually. We do on GoToWebinar have Harmony Core office hours, so you can ask the experts your specific implementation questions. Both Jeff and Steve are usually here for those. They're about every 6 weeks, and you can find that information to sign up on our website and also on the Harmony Core GitHub page. But I was also going to say, on the topic of cloud, it's going to be a big focus at the Dev Partner Conference this year. You can already register on the website at conference.synergex.com or just regular synergex.com. There's a a pretty prominent link for it right now, and it's going to be a pretty large focus.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking more about it there as well. So, yeah, hopefully that answers your question. If you have some specifics, Tim, then by all means, let us know. Send in another support case, and we'll answer any questions you have, and the experts and that kind of stuff. But yeah, we're definitely trying to make a push for everyone to do cloud computing and that kind of stuff, because it's where everything's going, and so we're recognizing that and trying to help you as best we can, and I think Harmony Core is a great push for that. So I'm very impressed by what Jeff and Steve accomplished with that. So it's fun. It's fun. I mean, new stuff. I mean, shiny new stuff.
And it's open source, so available to all Synergy customers.
Do you know any version requirements for version 11?
Version requirements for version 11?
Sorry, for Harmony Core.
Harmony Core?
Oh. The recommendation is always to be up to date on what's the latest, but you can find the specific requirements on the Harmony Core.
Harmony Core's GitHub has a really helpful wiki, and they're constantly expanding that as well. And so for requirements and that kind of stuff. But usually want to be on the latest stuff, because we're always because that's a product that we're trying to support, and so we have been making a lot of changes and stuff for making sure that's fast and efficient. But as turnover as minimum, I'm not entirely sure at the moment, because it changes.
I guess remember, you can always upgrade your development environment, and with the exception of a couple of features that Phil mentioned, target older runtimes.
Yeah, exactly. Which is also a great feature to have. So all right.
I think we're at time, but if anyone else has any other questions, if you're not furiously typing them right now, you can always send them to support@synergex.com. If you have suggestions for other sort of educational opportunities that you'd like to see via GoToWebinar or otherwise, you can send them to classes@synergex.com, and that will go to my team. And hopefully we can put together some more awesome opportunities for you in 2020. And VMS users, don't worry, we've got something coming up for you soon. So so you will be taken care of in 2020 quite well, I believe.
Perfect. And thanks for Tim for the questions.
Yeah,
really
thank
appreciate
you.
it. So
Thanks, everyone.
thanks for coming. All that.